know, you really have to dedicate a lot of time. This is not a Monday through Friday job, right? This is a 24/7, 365. I saw somebody on New Year's Eve and they said, hey, you know, do you have the night off? And I'm like, I never have the night off.
Especially
this phone never turns off.
What's going on, Sarasota? My name is Brad Hannon.
Trey Martel.
Felipe Colon.
And listen, it's good to be back. I missed last episode, but we've got a killer guest this time. One podcaster to another. We've got Chief Troche. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir, you did.
Now do it the right way, because I didn't do it right. I know I didn't.
It's Chief Troche.
All right.
Yeah.
And you've got a podcast as well, right?
I do. It's called Chat with the Chief, and we're just like you guys. We're on all the podcast channels, wherever you get it, and YouTube, and even catch us on our Facebook channel as well.
That's awesome. So I want to dive right into that first.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on a podcast, so it makes sense to talk about why a podcast. I mean, what does the Sarasota Police Department need a podcast for? What was the vision behind it?
I think that's what everybody thought when I started it, right?
I love
Why
that,
do we
though.
need this? But I think I was inspired by my daughters. They're all in their 20s, and they love, I don't know if you heard of a podcast called Joe Rogan.
No, never heard of it.
Somebody like that.
I've been under a rock for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of it.
But they've just become so popular, and my kids are walking around the house or listening to these podcasts. And what I loved about it was they're working out and they're listening to it, or they're in the kitchen cooking, or they're doing their homework. And I'm like, wow, this really resonates with me, because it allows our people in our community, in the Sarasota community, to not only listen to what we have going on in the community, but they can do it while they're jogging. They can do it while they're playing tennis. They can do it when they're on a roof. They can do it when they're selling insurance.
When they're on a roof.
They can do it when they're on finances, right? So it really just worked out the flexibility, and especially after COVID, it only made sense, because we weren't bringing a lot of people into a room together really close anymore. And so the question was, how can we do this and do it even better? And the podcast really just answered all the questions for us.
I love it, man. I love it. And we listened to one episode. We'll get to it in a little bit later, but you know, I think our idea, one of our ideas anyways, kind of crossed paths, and we've had a lot of guests on that had opinions about these. We won't bring it up just yet.
Spicy.
But we're most excited for your opinion, because you've got the real like you know, information behind these roundabouts that we'll get to later.
Now, is it your podcast? Is it the police department's podcast? How does that work?
I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's the city's podcast.
City's podcast.
Yeah, I haven't, you know, trademarked it, LLC'd it, or anything like that, like some other people have done. No.
I gotcha. Well, I want to find out, like, how do you become a chief of police? Like, is that something you're elected into? Is that, how do you work your way up, or how did you land there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really cool for me, because I was able to work my way up. It's not like I just showed up at a business and they picked me along with 4 other people. I started as a patrol officer. I then became a field training officer. I then became a detective. I then became a sergeant, and I worked within all the divisions within the agency. I then became a lieutenant, and then I became a captain, and I became the deputy chief. Now,
And this is all Sarasota? Or
this is all in the city of Sarasota.
Wow, okay.
And so just so people understand the process for us, right? To be a sergeant, you have to take a written test, and then you have to go through several oral boards. You're scored, and then a list is created, 1 through 10. And then you're chosen top 1, top 2, top 3 gets chosen within a course of 2 years, because that's how long the list is.
Okay.
Same thing for lieutenant. You have to take another 100-question test, and then you have to do multiple oral boards, and then you're scored again amongst your peers.
Wow.
And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So for the last few years, it's always like you're fighting for that promotion, right? But what it does is it makes you better, and you understand your standard operating procedures, your general orders, you understand state law, you understand situational awareness, you understand critical incidents. So it's just continually making you better and better and better. And then when you get to the positions of captain, then you're chosen actually by the chief of police. That's they get to pick who they want. And then same thing for deputy chief. So right now we have 4 captains, 1 deputy chief, and then a chief of police.
Okay, so they're picking between the 4 captains, essentially?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
then,
chief of police,
deputy chief,
deputy chief,
captains,
4 captains,
lieutenant, sergeants, and officers, yes. And then eventually, in my case, the chief of police decided to retire. They asked me if I was interested. And in fact, funny story, your father was the first one to call me literally within 45 minutes and said, hey, is this something that you're interested in? And I was like, absolutely, because For some reason, the night before, my wife and I had a conversation on pros and cons on becoming the next chief of police. I don't know why. I don't know if it's God in my ear talking to me, but we wrote a list on pros and cons, like, are you ready for the next step? And then literally 24 hours later, here it was, an opportunity.
Well, I mean, I think you didn't work as hard as you did to get to from patrol to deputy to, you know, all that stuff to stop there, right? So it's
right. It's kind of like what I always tell my daughters, you know, we didn't come this far to only come this far.
Yeah.
But, you know, not everybody's also built for the top job because, you know, that's a very different skill set. Mm-hmm. You know, we talked about this a little before we got on, but, you know, in navigating the delicate politics and, you know, you're pleasing a lot of different masters when you're in a role like that. And you ultimately answer to the citizens, right? So the whole family's involved. That's why this is the kind of thing you talk about your wife with, you know?
You're off base, he's about to tell you.
Right. Well, the chief advisor, my wife, you know, 100% has to be on board, right? Or this doesn't work.
Yeah, true.
And number two, you're 100% right, because as the deputy chief, the job of the deputy chief is to run the operations of the agency, right? So to your point, that might not be someone that is comfortable in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, or in front of politicians, right?
Yeah.
But they may be really good at what they do as far as running operations, criminal investigation division, support services division, patrol division, et cetera. But does that person have the ability to transition into the next role where it's more you're in front of the camera, you're on the microphone, you're dealing with different types of politicians or different mindsets, and you have to be willing to work with that. And you have to be willing to listen to people and absorb that and be patient and have grace. And so those are the things that come with this position. So you're right. Either you have it or you don't have it at that next
Based
level.
on everything you just said, I've got no chance at ever becoming the chief of police.
I like being in front of the camera, so.
I can do the camera, the microphone, the patience thing, not going to happen.
Well, you know, listen, in any organization, right, a good COO is not always a good CEO
Facts.
or CFO
Right.
or you know, any of those positions. That's why there's division of those powers.
Well, I gotta know two things. First, and that's a simple one, but I mean, it sounds like that progression's over like a decade. How long have you been with Sarasota Police?
Over 20 years.
Okay, well over a decade, 2 decades, in fact. And then secondly, the pros and cons. What was on the cons side?
So the cons is it's the time away from the family. You know, you really have to dedicate a lot of time. This is not a Monday through Friday job, right? This is a 24/7, 365. I saw somebody on New Year's Eve and they said, hey, you know, do you have the night off? And I'm like, I never have the night off.
Especially
this
not that
phone never turns off. I have to turn this phone so it gets updates, right? Otherwise, it's never powered off. So that's one of the cons. And
Is there a chance you can get pulled off this podcast right now?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Better get the questions in.
Yeah, we better get them in fast.
I got a question. Like, at what point does it get your attention as far as like incidents?
So the bosses know they can make decisions, but there's certain decisions that they don't want to make, right? So that's when
what's that litmus test?
That's usually like a critical incident. You know, if we have a you know, a couple of years ago we had an active shooter, if we have a barricaded subject, things of that nature that are really, or if hey, this is going to cost X amount of money, we better bring it to the table and have a chit chat about this. Those are things that are really going to get my attention.
What I mean, speaking of critical incidents, how long have you been the chief, by the way?
So it's been, 2 years? And I think I was the interim chief. I think I like to joke about it and say it was the longest job interview in the history of chiefs of police. It was 8 months that I was the interim chief of police. And during that time, we had some major incidents occur.
What was the most major incident?
Or the most challenging? The one that kept you up at night?
When you have 6 homicides in 8 weeks and you're the interim chief, you're going to sweat a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But what I would always convey is, one, I don't have a crystal ball, because if I had a crystal ball, I'd be traveling the globe solving crimes before they happen, right? Two, what I do have the power to do is put the right people on the project and solve these crimes. So all 6 of those homicides were solved within 24 hours, and within 48 hours, we had made arrests.
Wow.
That's what I can do.
Right.
So did I feel the pressure, you know, under that? Absolutely.
But it had to give you a lot of
but
confidence,
you performed.
too.
Performed, and one thing I've always had is short-term memory. I don't take it home. I know I don't beat myself over it. I trust my people. I empower my people. If I don't have the people in the right places, then I need to put the right people in the right places. But I know I have the right people in those places, because here's the other advantage of coming up through the agency is all these captains and lieutenants I came up with. So I know their weaknesses and I know their strengths.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I always put them in a position of strength and not weakness. and then we work on weaknesses over here on the side.
Right.
So that's the advantage for me.
You know, it's always kind of baffled me as to why a lot of these times we do these national searches for our next chief, and we bring in people from the outside.
Right.
Are there any advantages to that maybe we're missing? 'Cause
yeah.
you didn't go through that process, right? You were obviously homegrown. But the last
Correct.
chief we had was a third-generation officer and very successful chief in another town.
Yes.
Thank God we have Felipe.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's a time you do it and there's a time you don't, right? So if, like, let's say the New England Patriots, right? If their cultures are winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl and the head coach decides to leave, why would you go outside? You would take the next person up because they're going to continue that culture because they understand that culture. The time that you would go outside is when you have a losing culture. So if we had an issue within the agency, yeah, you should absolutely go outside because you got to bring in what we call a change agent. And a change agent is someone that comes in from the outside, has no affiliation with anybody inside, is willing to hurt feelings, is willing to demote people and promote people for various reasons, and then is usually a lifespan of about 3 years.
It's a really good point, though.
Because they don't last long.
Right.
In our case with Chief Tapino, she was a change agent, except she was able to continue last for about 8.5 years. But yeah, anytime you have a great culture, you want to hire from within. And one of the big things for the city for us is we always want to promote from within, because if I'm not cultivating the next chief right now, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, so you're 2 years in. How long do you see your tenure lasting?
Yeah. So one of the pros is I wasn't somebody retired from another agency, right? Coming from another state. I was someone that had skin in the game. I've bled on these streets. I love everybody in this community. I have friends within this community. So for me, it was 8 to 10 years is where I want to be, because I think if you're in that range, you're going to be forward thinking. Right, you're going to be thinking about the future. If you're retired from another agency and you're getting a paycheck over here, well, then if I have a bad day and I'm a couple of years in, I'm out.
Yeah.
But I can't do that, right? I've pulled up to the island. I've burned the ships. I'm on the island, and we're here to stay.
You got skin in the game.
I got skin in the game, for sure.
And is there a situation outside of non-performance that you're removed, or anybody in that position would be removed, or is it as long as your tenure can last, you're doing a great job, you can run it?
Correct. As long as my tenure is good, I can run it. As long as the city manager is happy with what I'm doing. Now, there's politics that come into play. Like one day if the city manager decide to leave and then another city manager came in, they may want to go to a different direction, right? That's why it's so key to do a really good job all the time and have the support of the community.
So
exactly.
Does the mayor have any decision-making involved with the chief?
I would think the mayor has some input with the city manager, but the way our government is set up, where it's a weak mayor and a strong city manager, the city manager has the ultimate decision with respect to that.
I definitely want to get to like some city of Sarasota or police, initiatives, but I'm learning so much here. And I don't know how many guests you've had on the podcast, but this is one of the beautiful things about having a podcast is getting unique guests on, learning a ton, about subjects that I know absolutely nothing about. And so on that note, how do you measure success? I mean, I run a call center. It's super easy from a numbers perspective. I mean, everything's on a spreadsheet. It's conversion, it's sales, it's how many calls did we take. It's all, how long did those policies stay? Obviously crime is a big thing, but what are some of the, measurements that you guys are using to gauge success?
Yeah. So for us, it's quantitative, just like you spoke to the numbers game, right? That's part of it. Yeah. And it's also qualitative, right? So quantitative. So what are we looking as far as numbers? So we're looking at decreases in crimes. We have Part 1 crimes. It's called Part 1 crimes. It's like murder, robbery, assault, rape, etc. So we're looking at those crimes. Are those crimes going down year to year to year to year? And if they're not, if there's certain crimes going up, what are you doing about it? How are you addressing it? So those are things that we look at. We look at arrests. Are arrests up? So that tells me as an executive in this business is if arrests are up, that means that morale is really good because the officers are out there and they're working. And then you look at DUIs. That's another big thing for us, especially being in this community. And sometimes I think the press runs with certain things and numbers, and they make it sound like we have a lot of DUIs, which we really don't. But our DUIs are up, and why is that? Because we give extra training. So if your numbers are up,
the training's working.
Absolutely. Right. And I call us a training-centric agency. If an officer makes a mistake, generally it's because it's just lack of training or lack of understanding. And in some cases, it's really we have officers that aren't from a minority community. And in some cases, they've never even seen a minority, believe it or not, right? So it's our job to see that and give them the appropriate training. Like right now, we train with the NAACP. And that's never happened in the history of our agency. And we've brought in a representative from the NAACP that trains our new officers about, hey, the talk, right? Because I don't know if you guys know what the talk is. I know what the talk is. I was given the talk. If you're ever pulled over, this is what you do. And my dad was a Chicago police officer. I still got the talk. So they don't
Tell me
understand.
about the talk. I might have
so
not,
the
I might not
talk
have got the
is
talk.
if you're a minority and
I still get the talk.
You get the talk.
I still
you
get
know
it.
what the talk is. So if you're a minority and you're driving your car and you get pulled over, hey, pull over, put the lights on in the car, put the window down, put your hands out, put the car in park, be respectful, answer questions, don't reach for anything. If they ask you to reach for a registration, say, sir, my registration's in my glove compartment, I'm now going to reach for it. Is that okay? Or would you like to open that door and get it yourself?
Right.
These are the things, just to be cognizant of what could potentially happen out there.
And I guess I got that talk in a different light. It was like, if you do these respectful things, you won't get a ticket. You know, that was a little different. But
Yeah, it was a little different.
hang the keys out the window. That's
our
what I
talk was
told.
you won't get hurt.
Right.
Right.
Big
And-
difference.
Right. It's
Really
a big
is.
difference. And so we watched some of these officers get that understanding from the NAACP, and it was mind blowing for them, and it was a game changer for them. So what they created was more empathy now. And so now we're very big, and our policy says that, hey, when you pull somebody over, you need to tell them why right from the start.
Right.
Yeah, I pulled you over because you're speeding. You know, and that does. People want to hear the why. So the numbers is part of it, right? And then the other part of it is community response. How is the community treating us? How is the community responding to us? What are the emails that I'm getting? What is the feedback that I'm getting when I'm within the community? So those are the things that we take in consideration as well, because when we have a unit like the community relations unit that we just started, there are no numbers that are going to be associated with all the things that they can keep from happening just by keeping a child busy instead of letting them go on and do some mischievous act, right? So because we have a partnership with our Parks District, our Robert L. Taylor Center, and we're able to go in there and play sports with the kids and then feed the kids and then take the kids home, that's a few days of attention that normally they might be on the street doing silly things, right? So the community relations unit has made a huge difference, and they go to the schools now. We have officers that go to the schools and they show up and parents are like, is everything okay? Yeah, everything's okay. Except you have 6 officers here opening the car doors, greeting your child, and
awesome.
walking them to class. Our community relations unit also meets the kids at bus stops. And they've built a relationship to the point now where they're making sure they're doing their homework.
Wow.
Before they go the next day, and they'll ask them, hey, have you done your homework?
So you're essentially stopping crime before it even starts because you're
Exactly.
building these relationships, and it's only natural for, especially a younger person to build that bond, and they don't want to disappoint you.
Right, correct.
Right?
And
they see you every day in their neighborhood, so you're not like this foreign entity.
absolutely. And they're not seeing us post a 911 phone call. They're seeing us before that. And because, and this is the reality is, some kids don't have a mom and a dad. Some kids have a mom or a dad or just a grandma that's raising them. And so they're looking for that figure in their life, that coach, that teacher, their mentor to help them. And it's amazing when you see these kids initially around us, and then you give them a few hours or build a relationship, and now they're hugging on us.
Yeah.
So how do you measure that, right? We can never measure the potential of what could happen.
How much has that helped you deal with, I know what's a problem in some of these neighborhoods out there that have a little bit higher criminal stuff, is people cooperating or not cooperating with the police, the no snitch.
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that one, because that's the one that makes
I don't
me
like that
so
term, but
angry.
I don't like that term, but I figured I'd make it very explicit.
Yeah. They say snitches get stitches, right?
They do say
That's
that.
what they say.
That's what they say.
And so when I'm in the neighborhoods, I remind them that if my next door neighbor does something wrong, I'm snitching all day long. Like, this thing holds snitches get stitches, has to stop at some point, because it doesn't stop, then we're just going to continue in this loop over and over and over. Now, the way you break that is, now maybe that person that saw something understands that we now have a relationship with their son or daughter, and now we have a relationship just by virtue of that relationship, and now they may be more inclined to tell us something. So in another way we're trying to mitigate that is, we have developed a community response team. So not our community relations unit, a community response team. And so we have all the heavy hitters in Newtown, and it's the Jetson Grimes, the Willie Shaw, and they have come together as a team. We had them sign non-disclosure agreements. So now they come in, they understand the policy, and anytime we have a critical incident, we phone them up, we text them, and we say, hey, we just had a shooting at this location. We need you to respond. So they put on their CRT shirts, they put on their identification. The commander on scene already knows that they're coming. They already have pictures of who our big hitters are. They roll in, they lift the tape, they come into the command center. We brief them on what just happened. They then go into the potential crowd. One, they gather information. And two, they're able to tell everybody, hey, everything's going to be okay. They're able to quell the situation. Then they come back in the command post. We get more information. We give them more information. And then they go back. And it's wash, rinse, repeat.
Right.
We've had such great success with that. It's amazing. We've been able to solve so many crimes because of that relationship. So that was just another way to avoid the snitches get stitches. Well, tell the pastor that's on our CRT. Or tell Jetson Grimes who's on our CRT. Tell an old G who's on our CRT.
An OG.
Right? Tell the OG.
For people who don't know, the names that he's mentioning are literally like the people who kind of, they know everybody in this community. Yeah. I wouldn't say they built this community. A lot of people built the community. But their names people know.
Carolyn Mason,
They walk into a crowd and, half the people there might even be their relatives.
Correct.
I mean, so they know who to talk to.
Well, and I think everything you're talking about is related to in the way that the community relations, you got the community response, community relations. Well, over enough time with the community relations, maybe you don't even really need the community response as much because these young kids that are growing up, they don't need that intermediary. They already have a relationship with the police that wasn't there before.
That's a great point. We won't need that buffer as much,
you always
forward, and that's the goal. And that's the goal. The goal is, hey, if you need help or you need assistance or you're in trouble, call us. We're coming.
So on the quantitative side, if you don't mind tooting your own horn a little bit, what are our numbers looking like, year over year and things like that? I mean, we're seeing a rise, we're seeing a decrease. Obviously, we have a lot of new people coming into the area, so wouldn't be surprised with a little bit of a rise.
Right.
Well, let's hear it.
So it's interesting. So last year we saw a 6% increase in Part 1 crimes, right? Okay. But a lot of that's because we're coming out of COVID, and now people are starting to be more active. This year, we all know that we had a huge increase in people within our city, right? I mean, you don't have to be a genius to drive on, 301, 41, 10th Street, 14th Street, 17th Street.
Midday.
Right, midday, and it's still bumper to bumper. So this year, I'm going to say on this show right here, I won't give the number, but we're going to see a record low in Part 1 crimes drop. We are going to see an increase in felony and misdemeanor arrests, increase in DUI arrests. The numbers are going up where we want them to go up, and the numbers are going down where we want them to go down. And so I want to ride that wave. So,
and those numbers go, I mean, walk me through why it's good, why it would be, an objectively good thing for there to be more DUIs. I mean, I know you mentioned it before, the training and things like that, but isn't there an educational side of it where people should eventually start Ubering more and
without a doubt, we put our PSAs out, on our social media platforms for sure. But we did have 14 traffic fatalities this year. Now, none of which that we've attached so far, and we have 2 open to DUI. We're still waiting on the test to come back on that. But at the end of the day, we all know that people out there, you got a downtown area, people are drinking and driving. I mean, we've been on Main Street. At some point, more than likely they're getting in a car. Hopefully, they're getting an Uber.
Right.
But we want people to know that we have officers out there, and we're going to stop you and we're going to pull you over for DUI. And it's so important because we want people to know that they can come downtown and be safe. We want people to know that they can go to the restaurants downtown or on the island, right, and come off the island and be safe. Because at the end of the day, we just want people to go home, be with their families, and live a long-lasting life. So it is important. I think DUIs in the past years, we've kind of shunned away from them only because it's a misdemeanor, one, and it's literally a 4-hour encounter. And then there's a depot that usually subsequently happens thereafter, which is probably another 4 hours, and then potentially a trial. So it's a lot of work for a misdemeanor, but what we've done is we've educated our people. They know how to do them better now, and so we're seeing an increase in DUIs.
Okay. Hey, I hope you're learning a ton here from Chief Troche. I know that I am. If you want to learn even more about the Chief, stay tuned for the rapid fire questions.
I am Police Chief Rex Troche, and this is Rapid Fire. Cubs all day.
Root for the Cubs.
Ooh, if I wasn't a cop, I would most likely be a manager at Publix.
Learn and grow with us. Just remember, every store manager started somewhere else at Publix.
We have this inclination towards donuts. So yes, the stereo, it is real.
Donuts.
Ooh, all right, I got it. Your day starts with a coffee and ends with a wine. Takes forever to get ready.
So she's never on time for anything.
Jordan, all day.
You have chosen wisely.
I'd say the most challenging aspect of being the police chief is really just balance, right? You never make anybody happy, and it's really just balancing that side of it. And what I like at the end of the day is I'm fortunate to be blessed with a great team, and so I get a lot of great information, guidance, and at the end of the day, it's my decision, and I live with it. Bad. I can tell you that I love the drones. I am so impressed with the drones. I can get feeds sent to my cell phone while I'm anywhere and watch what the drones are looking at. The drones. Shotgun. Marina Jacks.
All right. So we understand that Manatee County did away with the red light camera.
Oh yeah,
Traffic
good
stuff.
one.
Okay.
Did
I believe they did.
That's
So my
spicy.
question to
You're
you
behind the
is,
times.
how
Yeah.
soon can the city of Sarasota do away with the red light traffics? And if they're not going to do that, why?
Yeah, I don't foresee us doing away with the red light camera. I really don't. I think
We were going to get so many thumbs up on this podcast.
Yeah, I know, but I can tell you, I'm driving in my Tahoe in a police car, and I'm worried about the red light camera. I really am. So, I mean, if I'm getting worried about the red light camera and I'm cognizant of it, then I think a lot of other people are going to be cognizant of it. And so, that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? So I always tell people I live with a double-edged sword every day. I just try to pick the duller of the sides, right? Because I get cut one way or another. Whatever I say, I'm going to not appease this group or not appease this group. But if I could have an officer on every corner running red lights or sitting there running red lights, we would. It's gonna save lives. That's the reality of it. And so I just think people knowing that the potential of that red light camera, they're gonna slow down before that light hits, or they're gonna pay that ticket and then they're gonna realize, hey, I don't want to pay that ticket again. So I'm on the other side of it. I see the pros to it.
Which red light camera is the biggest ATM for the city?
I would say the most active one is probably you're at Bay Vista and 41.
Really?
That's an active one. B Ridge.
I would think this 301 in
B
Fruitville,
Ridge and
man. That thing
41.
is.
That Bay Vista 41 light is very frustrating because
Yeah.
it just gets so jammed up there, and sometimes you get caught 2 cycles.
There used to be one at that red light, no turn on red. I think it was going from 41 to University.
That's not city anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that's
mean, the
what they
good
got.
thing
They
is
took
I'm
that down.
the good thing is I'm driving down the road the other day and I had my GPS on. It said red light camera ahead, so like at least I got some warning.
When you looked down at your GPS and blew through it.
No, it was still it was still green. It was
Or
good.
you think twice a little bit.
You know what?
Hit the gas.
No joke. That's so funny you said that because I was literally listening to. The only reason I remember this is because normally I wouldn't even have the volume on or the GPS, and I'm listening to the podcast about the roundabouts and the people looking down. I don't know who you had on.
Right.
I think it was a female, and she said it was a female. I think she was on the patrol unit, but
Officer
she's
Beskin.
Yeah, so she said, another thing is everyone's using GPSs. Look at the signs around you, you know, and we don't a lot. We look at our freaking GPS.
She was absolutely right. I remember I was in Orlando one time. I was at University of Central Florida on their campus, which is basically a city, and I literally had my head down as this road was blocked off. I'm like, no, I should be able to go around. It says right here. But that's what happens in these roundabouts. You have people that are not from here. You have people that are walking that are not from here.
Don't go too deep yet.
Bro,
Don't go too deep.
We got to save that one.
Time on that one.
We'll save that one.
To piggyback on Trey's question, though, another one of the ones that I know you've gotten probably some negative feedback on, and it's somewhat recent, is I think the city of Sarasota made marijuana a crime now again or whatever. I don't know how you
This is a good one.
I don't know the politically
Just
correct way to
up.
put that.
Talk to us about the city of Sarasota marijuana.
Recriminalized marijuana or whatever.
The marijuana has always been criminal in the state of Florida and in the city of Sarasota.
It's just what I hear.
Always has been criminal.
I heard the federal government has something to say about it too.
Yeah. And so what happened was, and I'll tell you the whole story, is the commission created the ability to give someone a civil citation for marijuana. So as long as it wasn't burnt, they weren't necessarily smoking it, it's in their possession, it's in the misdemeanor amount, we were guided, hey, give that person a civil citation. So if I just arrested you with a kilo of cocaine, MDMA, fentanyl, I'm hitting you with all these felony charges, and you have a scale in your car, and you're within 1,000 feet from a church or school, I'm taking you to jail for all these felony charges. But if you had some marijuana less than 20 grams, you're getting a civil citation with it. So that was kind of different, right?
Right.
Then what we did was,
can you break down?
So you're getting it with you're going to jump, but you're also
that
getting
person's
a
getting a civil citation. They're getting all these felony charges and sale, and they're getting a civil citation. The way it was written, that's how we had to do it.
Okay.
Now, what we did was we presented every quarter to a board, the Independent Police Advisory Panel, IPAP. And so our person that tracks all these numbers would come before the board and say, okay, in this quarter we had so many people get a marijuana civil citation. We had so many people comply. Well, 84% of the people were not complying.
Meaning
they weren't paying the civil fine, whatever the civil fine is, or they weren't doing the public service.
It's probably higher than the red light cameras tickets in our
And so accompanied with that, we didn't have any teeth to put with that to say, hey, if you don't pay this, then we're going to suspend your license, or we're going to double the fine, or we're going to then send it to the state attorney's office. So none of that was built into when it was written. So what IPAP said was, literally they would hear these numbers and look at me like it was my fault that these people weren't complying. And I wouldn't say anything, that they were the ones to oversee it. And then at some point through the course of the year, they said, hey, enough's enough. Let's get rid of this. Let's go with what the state attorney is doing, which is like you get 2 chances, 2 bites at the apple, and then potentially charges.
So civil charges.
Right.
Okay.
Got to pay your tickets on both of those.
Right.
Though.
And so the state attorney had built-in processes in a system in order to make sure that was done correctly. Now, let's go back to the other argument back over here is, well, somebody who has 2 bites, now if they get a third under the APAD, which is what they call their system, the adult diversion program, once they had 2 bites at the apple, then they're going to get charged. Well, under the marijuana civil citation, you could get 100 bites at the apple and you're not getting anything.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, you have to kind of look at it as a citizen and saying, hey, is this worth police's time to do this for what? So someone gets 100, 150, 200 civil citations, and what's really coming of it
doesn't sound like
our time.
But it doesn't sound like on the grand scale, really not a whole lot's changed except for you have more teeth on the back end if they're non-compliant.
Right. And what people have to remember too is officers have discretion. Right. So we have discretion. So now an officer can see, hey, you have less than 20 grams. Hey, listen, I'm going to take this. I've already tested. It's positive. We're going to put it in for destruction. Have a good day. Depending on what's going on, because you're in certain situations, you may not want to make an arrest, right? You may have a party somewhere, it's 200 people, and you make that arrest, and now it's a fight, and now someone gets hurt. So officers are making those decisions on the fly as well.
But basically what you described is a law isn't a law if there's no enforcement mechanism attached to it that works. So it doesn't help anybody.
No, it doesn't. It was written, and I get the reason for why it was written, but from what we saw, no one was complying because it really didn't have a mechanism, what we call teeth.
Makes sense.
Cool. Can you give me one of your, I don't know how to word this, outrageous stories from coming up in the police office?
Yeah.
Yeah, like day in the life.
Like a high-speed chase.
Yeah, I'll give you one. I got you. I was trying to like think of clean ones, like because some of them really went sideways.
I can imagine.
So I can tell you that it was my third day, just being on the job. I was still in training, and we still had Nextels. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Back in the day.
Wish we still had
Yeah,
those,
me
man.
too. They were
Those are
so cool.
great.
It was like a mini walkie-talkie. And so I was with my field training officer, who I had already known for about 5.5 years because I had worked for another agency, and we had gone to schools together. So we had become friends,
right,
having gone to these schools. And now here I apply to this agency, I get hired, and now he's my field training officer. And we had the same amount of experience. I was on the SWAT team. So we're in the car together. I'm driving. His Nextel beeps, and he's being told by a friend of his in Manatee County that they're chasing a serial killer.
Oh, wow.
And they just canceled the pursuit. So, well, man, the Sarasota
They do
PD,
that because it gets unsafe.
right? But Sarasota PD 20 years ago is a Wild West. I mean, it was. They had a picture of John Wayne in the sergeant's office in his cowboy hat. That is legit. They really did, because we would chase you for running a stop sign. We would chase you till the wheels fell off 20 years ago. So we were in. We were in the chase. We picked up the chase. We chased the guy. Bayfront, he ended up getting stop sticked. So those are those sticks we carry in our trunk.
Yeah.
So they threw their sticks out, and they were able to stop stick them. All his tires are flat right there at the Bayfront. We're surrounding the car. We're calling K9. I jump out of the car. Now I'm just in training, right? But my FTO is following me because I used to do this in SWAT all the time. So I know the best route to take and try to avoid crossfire. So then we get up on the car. We surround the car. And then the decision was made to send in a K9. And he's in there. He's in this car. And they sent in a K9 on a long lead because he wasn't listening to commands. And he just looked out the window and took his life right in front of us.
Oof.
Yeah. And so I had never seen that before. And so got him out of the car and started getting him help right away. And I looked around and I saw how calm everybody was at this department. And immediately I knew I made the right choice to come to this agency.
Wow.
Because all the bosses, the sergeants, lieutenants on the scene had acted like they had been there, done that. They treated this person with respect, got him help right away, but nobody was panicking. And that's when I knew that I was in the right place. Fast forward like a year later, they write a book about it. It's called Into the Water, and I'm in the book. I didn't even know it was in the book, right? Someone had to tell me that they had basically documented what we did using radio calls, and they were able to put the pieces together.
No kidding. Just a random person somewhere
Yep.
that
Some
likes to
author
listen
picked
to
it up, and it turned out it was a major serial killer. He had just killed his family in another state just north of us, and that was like day 3 on the job.
Wow.
Right there on the Bayfront.
Right there on the Bayfront.
And if that were a movie, that would have been quite a scene.
I felt like it was a movie.
Good lead in.
Sounds like
Good lead in for my next
Yeah.
question. What's your favorite cop movie?
Bad
Cop
Boys.
Bad Boys?
Bad Boys, and what's the one with Stallone? And what's the one actor?
I feel like Felipe should know this if anybody.
I'm not a movie guy,
But
I mean,
I-
not like The Judge.
I love, no,
That's
it's
kinda
not the
science
Judge,
fiction-y.
but yeah, I'd say Bad Boys.
Bad
That
Boys,
one.
good movie.
Well,
Copland?
Copland's a good one, but that's a little like slower.
Never heard of it.
Slower pace.
Never heard of it. It beats me. I think it's a great time to jump into the fun stuff. I mean, we're going to probably spend a little bit more time with Chief than we have anybody else. So Trey, why don't you tee it up for him?
You got it.
He'll knock it out of the park.
So our first sponsor, Tominator Law, is sponsoring this segment. What are your thoughts on roundabouts? Do you love them or hate them?
So I'm indifferent on roundabouts. I think right place, right location is a good thing. I will say, first off, we're prone to tropical storms and hurricanes, right? So the nice thing about roundabouts is when the power goes out, those roundabouts are still working, right? Those are beautiful because I was down in Northport after this last hurricane, and major intersections became 4-way stops, which became you're stuck in traffic trying to get food and supplies to people for hours, right?
And also, you have to put a cop there to run the
You
traffic.
have to.
Right.
And listen, I was at that intersection, and they literally had 4 highway patrol there, and they still couldn't even control the intersection.
And that's 4 people that could be doing other things to respond to the storm.
Absolutely. So I'm a fan of roundabouts in the right place, the right location. The one in Venice, right off of Jacaranda, by Center or Venice Avenue, or that one. Yeah, that's a great roundabout, right? Because it's huge. There's not a lot of foot traffic. The one we have at the Bayfront, it's tough. The one it is Gulfstream right there. It's tough because again, you have people that are new here. You have people walking around that are new here. You have people driving the Views. Those little electric bikes are new here. And
you have really old people there as well.
Maybe, I don't know.
We were coming off of Longboat Key off of St. Armands, and we watched a lady go the wrong way in the roundabout straight against the traffic.
That does happen. But I will say this about that intersection, right? And I haven't gone back and done the numbers from years past, but we haven't had a fatality at that intersection, right? What we've seen is people just rubbing fenders together because they're just impatient. Their head's in the phone.
I heard that on your podcast.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. They're it's like Talladega Nights over there. They're rubbing. And so my thing on the show was show some grace, right? Hey, if you don't get it the first time, just go around, get it a second time.
You'll be stuck there for days.
Yeah. But I think if we have better signage there, I think it'll improve immensely.
People kind of complain about accidents at that roundabout, but they don't realize that before there were accidents at that light all the time.
Right.
I mean, people were hitting the unconditional surrender statue when it was down there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the reality of this kind of neighborhood.
So what I've noticed just in life in general, right? People don't like the way things are, and people don't like change. Mm-hmm. And eventually, I think people will grow to like the roundabouts once we have a better understanding. But once the signage comes in, which I'm hoping is coming, and that's through the state of Florida.
Right.
That's through FDOT. That's not through us. Everybody out there that thinks we built that roundabout, we didn't.
Right.
So we are really relying on them to put that signage up.
I mean, the longer they're here, you would think the more people get used to them. So hopefully over time. I mean, the tourism isn't going to change, but they have those in their state too, almost everywhere. I feel like
they're coming everywhere.
The real question is though, do you know who Jesse Biter is, and have you seen his little camera he's got on his condo over there? Because he's got a condo basically overlooking that, and he's filmed some pretty good blooper reels.
Some pretty good rubs.
Some rubs. Yeah, I've heard the name. I've heard the name before, and I do get photos.
Some pretty good videos,
not just from Jesse, which I don't know if I've got any from Jesse, but there's some other people that send me.
Oh man, there's some good ones.
Film.
So another thing I wanted
if
to
Jesse's listening, you send stuff the Chief's way,
Back to the social media stuff. I noticed that you guys post some criminals on your social media to call them out, and actually we had a package thief, an Amazon package thief in our neighborhood. They caught him, and you guys post them. In Cosmopolitan Court.
That works. That works. Social media is the internet in general is a scary.
So is that like a public shaming type thing, or just to let the public know that you got their back, or what's the thought process?
I want to say all the above on that, right? I mean, if you're going to be embarrassed, maybe you won't do it anymore, right? And 2, the public needs to know. In past years, we haven't been very good about telling the public about what we were doing and the things we were accomplishing. And I think with help of Cynthia, our PIO, and Genevieve before her, we have just been able to do a much better job of that. And maybe it's a little bit of the Grady Judd theory, too. I don't know if you've ever seen Grady Judd, but he's never done a press conference without an 8x10 in front of him.
Right.
And so public shaming and letting the public know, hey, and be on the lookout for this person because they're going to get out of jail. And now maybe you'll recognize them when you see them in your neighborhood.
What's the old saying? Sunlight's the best disinfectant.
That's it.
Right? We shine a light on these things, and
that's it.
Well, I think you coming on this podcast is a testament too to talking to the community and walking them through a little bit more of what we're doing. So, or what you guys are doing. So, did we cover the big stuff? Is there any big announcements or things like that the public needs to hear, because we know that all of Sarasota listens to this, right?
Yeah.
You've heard the slogan, when Sarasota speaks, everyone listens. So
yeah, you're like E.F. Hutton.
This is like your biggest moment.
Do you remember E.F. Hutton?
No, I don't.
You don't remember E.F. Hutton?
I don't remember.
Well, you know who came up with that?
Who came up with that?
I'm in finance. I know what you're talking.
All right.
Yeah.
So E.F. Hutton.
So he's not an author?
We cribbed it.
When E.F. Hutton talks, they're a financial planner. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, and there's a commercial every time their financial planners are talking.
But when Sarasota SpeaX talks, everyone listens.
That's right.
No, I love it. We do have some big things coming up. I always have something being planned. One thing we do have coming, hopefully by the end of this year, is our new command post. That's something that we've really not to this type of technology that will be coming in the end of December. Right now we kind of work out of a fancy lawn trailer that we've kind of worked up with monitors and computers. But now we're going to have a beautiful truck command post with a satellite capability. And essentially it's a mobile police department. So should for any reason we have an issue here, we could run right out of this mobile command post. Or if we needed to go on scene somewhere and bring our people out, we could use this command post to organize everything from personnel to our drones, things of that nature. And that's another thing that Game Changer is drone technology has really changed the game for us. When we just had the New Year's Eve celebration, about 35,000 people came out to attend that. And to have what we call Overwatch with the drones, to have that technology that should something happen, we could act immediately and tell our officers, hey, this is where it's at. We need you to go to this quadrant. We had our QRFs on scene, which is our quick response force, our mini SWAT teams that are in unmarked vehicles driving around the perimeter, getting ready to get into the fight if need be. And I like to also say, too, is, here we have this beautiful event downtown, New Year's Eve, 35,000 people, and 2 arrests were made.
Wow. I was going to say, how'd we do? Yeah.
So I think that's important for the community to know. It was a family event, and one was for a warrant, and the other one, I believe, was for a battery.
Right.
But to have that many people in that small of a footprint, and to have minor, I wouldn't even call that minor arrests, 2 arrests on that size footprint.
Does that include DUIs?
That's amazing. That's all together for that
Holy
event.
Smokes.
2 arrests.
But, I think that's an important point, because often the discussion we have about having a vibrant and lively nightlife downtown is it's going to bring all this crime, it's going to bring all these problems, and we have a police force that can handle it.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And you demonstrated that this New Year's Eve.
A good example was a couple of years ago, we had basically 80 officers on the footprint, and we had that incident at Padalini's where a gentleman was shot in the head and died, and you had a police officer every 10 feet. Like, it wasn't going to stop that. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen. So for the most part, that's what we call an anomaly in our business.
Right.
And for us to have this event that we just had, this is how we do business.
Right.
And so Sarasota is safe, downtown New Year's Eve, safe environment. We have everything from our canines out there to our drone unit to our SWAT members to undercovers out there. We have undercovers walking in the crowd and people don't even know they're standing next to a police officer. So we really do what we call a full smash.
Wow, that's crazy.
All hands on deck.
I think 5 years ago was the last time I came downtown, and I think we called an Uber at the end of the night and waited about 3-4 hours for it. So for 2 arrests to include DUIs and everything, that's pretty wild.
It's an amazing number.
Yeah, I would have taken the over on that one for sure.
I should have done it. I should have asked. I should have done it. Over under.
Anything you guys want to cover before we wrap it up? Otherwise, thank you. It's really awesome to have you on.
We didn't ask him who he would recommend for the podcast.
There you go.
But we don't want him giving away his first choices, right?
Yeah. No, I'm going to be
people whose story Sarasota needs to know who they're not hearing.
Yeah. So I would say, listen, you need to bring in Jetson Grimes.
Okay.
Because when you talk to that man, he is E.F. Hutton. When he talks, people listen. Right. And just the way he presents himself, amazing.
Okay.
Amazing. A little farther out, and I don't know how you guys are on this one, I love me some Gary Brecka.
Okay.
That guy with health, and I'm going to try and reach out to him for officer wellness, because the things that he's doing, he's talking about
it is pretty
the cold plunges stuff. And talking about vitamins and talking about infrared light.
Your human design, essentially, and
amazing,
optimizing it. It is pretty crazy. I think I've talked to you about that before. It's worth just doing the blood work and sending it in and getting their recommendations and all.
No, it is amazing. And I think he said it's like $500-600 to do it.
Yeah, just to get the recommendation or whatnot.
It's just something you need once in a lifetime. That's somebody I would like to have on my show. So
if we get him on, we'll let you know and we'll loop you in and we'll do back-to-back episodes or something, because that would be a feat for us to get him on anyways.
We'll try to work them too.
Yeah,
and we have some local people too. Like we have Urban Meyer.
Yeah,
that lives locally, and you can talk about leadership and things of that nature. But I think those are three people, definitely.
We plan on doing 50 episodes this season, and I don't think we're going to run out of interesting people anytime soon.
No, I don't think so.
You have a lot of it. You have writers that live here. You have some actors that live here. really at the end of the day that interests me the most is just really how this town was built. When you see some old pictures of downtown, and they have them in City Hall. If you ever down in City Hall and you want to walk the hallway, they have photos from the 1940s and the 1950s. And then you're trying to, like, where is that building in relation to now? And, oh, there's a Gator Club because that's been around here forever because that used to be a brothel back in the day.
Oh!
So it's really interesting when you hear about the history, especially when you love a town, and then you bring in historians that have lived it, and they talk about Newtown, and it's really interesting.
Did you see the PBS special they did on Newtown?
No.
You would enjoy that. And they interview a lot of people that you know. Some of you even mentioned today
that's
about
awesome.
the history of that particular part of of our city.
Yeah, Overtown, right?
Yeah,
Overtown
definitely.
and Newtown. It is really interesting history here, and you guys are making history.
Well, we're trying.
We neglected to mention that you made history too, and I know this isn't something you go around touting, but you're also the first Hispanic American who's commissioner, or the chief of police here in the city.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And what's cool is my dad was one of the first 7 police officers they hired at the Chicago Police Department. And so it's like we keep making history. But one of the things I always like to say when that's brought up is I'm a police chief for everybody, right? Like growing up in Chicago, I didn't understand color. I didn't understand racism. My best friend was Jewish, Yugoslavian, Dominican, Black. I mean, we just all hung out and we just loved on each other. So my big thing here is I don't care what color you are. I don't care if you're from another planet. As long as you're a good person, we're down.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. So that's what I try to bring here as a chief. I try to bring that flavor over as a chief. And I have one question for you guys.
Oh, okay.
You guys ready?
Flip the table.
Perfect.
Like a true podcast host, right?
I got a question. Did you guys meet at like Cask and Ale?
Why are we kind of bro?
Well, what I love about it is, right, this isn't the typical group that you would think, like, I think you'd be hanging out with roofers and you're like with, the
insurance guy.
Insurance and the financial. Like, so how did this all come together?
I think I met Felipe at Libby's. I think that might have been the first time we met.
I went to high school with Trey, so
okay,
we went way back. These two boneheads had the idea together and started it. Didn't fully take off. I had this genius behind me who does all the masterful production, so that's how I got a seat at the table because of him. But he came to me with the idea, and I wanted to do stuff more locally because I did stuff on the insurance space nationwide, but it wasn't ever in my own backyard really. So this is just a way to meet more people and, learn from people like yourself. Even when you were talking about leadership and, pulling somebody from outside, when a change agent versus, when you have a good culture, I'm thinking, man, do I need a change agent or do I need to promote from within? Like,
right.
I mean, those things go through my head as we're talking. So
right. And that's a good point because I try to tell people, they're like, you're the chief of police. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the chief of police, but I also run a $43 million business.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And I have to think in that approach. And so I take a lot of things from business as well. So that's why I love meeting guys like you guys.
And I'll also point out that unlike some of our previous chiefs, Chief Troche is always in a suit and impeccably dressed.
Thank you.
I mean, if you could see the shoes, I mean, I know you can't see the shoes. If you could see the shoes.
Take a picture and stitch it in.
Yeah,
but I mean, listen, everybody has their leadership style, but you have an executive leadership style and you approach it like, you're serving the needs of your customers, who essentially the constituents who live in the city. Why have a police department if its role is not to make the quality of life better? I mean, we could technically just be under the counter.
We all agree with all this stuff. We didn't get to the question about 5-0 donuts.
Oh, what about 5-0? Do they make protein donuts?
Are you a fan of 5-0 donuts? You go there? Or donuts in general? How about that?
Okay, let's try donuts in general.
Why do you ask that question,
I love donuts, especially if they're protein donuts. But 5-0 really treats us very well. They make the biggest, most incredible cartoon-like donuts. I mean, if you got a special occasion, and your kids just eat a quarter of it because then they're going to be off the walls. But their donuts are amazing. I see their boxes on our first floor all the time, and I lift the lid, and I'm so tempted, and then I'm like, I can't do it. I'm going to get fat.
Yeah.
But no,
you got a long tenure ahead of you. You got to stay healthy.
All right. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
brother.
coming on. We had a great time.
I appreciate you, man.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks again, brother. All right.